The film opens as Eve Macaro is at a hospital, blooded up and holding a spinning ballerina toy. A flashback shows Eve living with her father Javier in peace, until one day when armed men show up to hunt him down. Javier keeps Eve hidden before eliminating the gunman. Their boss, the Chancellor, arrives to confront Javier, since his wife was part of their cult, and he was part of a rival organization, claiming that Javier stole her from them and thus caused her death. The Chancellor gives Javier the choice to commit suicide, so that Eve will remain unharmed. Or if he kills the Chancellor, then both Javier and Eve will die. Javier prepares to turn the gun on himself until Eve calls out for him. He kills the gunman before they can get to Eve, but he gets shot. Javier manages to get himself and Eve out of the house as a bomb goes off and kills the remaining gunman, but he quickly succumbs to his wounds in front of his daughter. Eve is met at the hospital by Winston Scott, offers his condolences and an opportunity for Eve to be taken in by her father's family. She agrees, and Winston brings her to home of the Ruska Roma to meet with the director. Eve also meets Nogi, who tells her about the Kikimora, mythological spirits that can be good or bad depending on the host. Over the next 12 years, Eve trains under the director as a ballerina, while also learning combat and gunplay through Nogi. Eve trains until her feet bleed, hoping to improve with each session, and her skills as an assassin grow more and more lethal. However, she has little to no friends, except for one other young woman, Tatiana. When Eve sees that Tatiana's belongings are missing, she learns from the director that they let her go because they didn't feel she had what it took to do what the Ruska Roma do. The other students are stunned when the home is visited by John Wick, who is currently seeking help from the director. Eve approaches John and asks how she can get out into the field and do what he does. John tells her that she could always walk out or make the choice herself to be like him. The director sends Eve on her first field mission. She is to protect a young woman, Katla Park, from an incoming target, Il Seung. Eve finds Katla at a nightclub and watches as Seung and his men menacingly make their way towards Katla. Eve confronts the men and proceeds to fight them. She ends up killing them before taking on Seung, stabbing him repeatedly with the peen of a hammer. Eve guides Katla out to safety. 2 months later, Eve has just completed another hit job against a group of men in an apartment. As she is leaving, a van with 2 armed men crashes into her car. They try to kill her, but Eve takes them out quickly. She notices one of the gunmen has an X-shaped scar on his wrist, similar to the men who murdered her father. Eve cuts off the gunman's hand and brings it to the director for answers. She says she knows that the mark belongs to members of a cult, but they hold a truce with the Ruska Roma since they both stay out of each other's businesses, so she cannot help Eve track them down. Eve goes to the Continental Hotel, checking in with Charon before going to find Winston. Despite his belief that the cult should not be messed with, Eve hands him the gold token that he gave her when they first met, and Winston relents. He has Eve assigned to track down an assassin, Daniel Pine, who may help her. Eve finds Pine at the Continental in Prague. After she infiltrates his room, she finds his young daughter Ella. Eve and Pine draw their weapons on each other, but eventually back down, since Eve says she only wants to find the cult. In the hotel lobby, a woman named Lena, who works for the Chancellor, contacts him to let him know she has eyes on Eve. He orders his cult members to go after her, despite knowing the rules about not spilling blood on the grounds of the Continental. The bounty on Pine's head then doubles so that killers may be tempted to break the rules. The gunmen attempt to infiltrate Pine's room, but one of his booby traps goes off and blows the brains out of one gunman. The other 2 are fought by Eve and Pine. The 2 run outside of the hotel with Ella, but they are both incapacitated, and Ella gets kidnapped. Eve wakes up next to the other two cult members. Since she did not break the rules and didn't kill anyone, she is spared execution, while the other two are taken out in a hail of bullets, and the owner tells Eve she needs to check out. Eve instead later goes to visit a gun shop owner named Frank, as he is showing her his wares. Members of the cult begin to open fire and attack. Frank gets shot in the hand, but Eve ends up killing the rest of the gunmen. For her help, Frank shows Eve the supposed hidden location of the cult, somewhere in the Austrian mountains. Eve arrives in the town of Hallstatt, which houses several secret assassins. She goes into a tavern, where she is soon found by cult gunmen. Eve fights and kills them, but is soon faced with backup when the tavern employee Agnetha calls for more cult members. Eve fights Agnetha and the rest of the cult members. She shoots Agnetha in the head and then goes into the basement to find guns and grenades to help her fight back. While Eve kills most of the cult members, she is taken down and has her jacket ripped up to reveal her Ruska Roma tattoo, which lets the Chancellor know who Eve really is. As Eve gets closer, she is confronted by the Chancellor and Lena. He reveals that Lena is her long-lost older sister, who holds animosity towards Eve because Javier took her to have a better life, while Lena was stuck with the cult. She also believes it was Javier's fault that their mother was killed, since she left the cult for a member of the Ruska Roma. Ella is also the Chancellor's granddaughter, and he plans to train her to become a killer. Eve and Lena are left to deal with one another, and the Chancellor orders his men to kill them both. They throw grenades into the room, which kill Lena, but Eve survives. The Chancellor calls the director to declare that Eve acting against them is an act of war. While the director insists that she did not send Eve, she can send someone to stop her. He tells her that they have until midnight to deal with Eve, or war between the cult and the Ruska Roma will be inevitable. Eve gathers her weapons for her last stand. John shows up to deal with her under the director's orders.
She sent you here to kill me?
That's up to you.
When Eve shows no interest in backing down, she and John engage in a fight. It ends with a draw as John agrees to let Eve deal with the Chancellor before the midnight deadline. Eve enters the town as the Chancellor calls upon every last assassin within reach to take care of Eve. She grabs a flamethrower and begins to barbecue the cultist goons until the Chancellor's right-hand man Dex arrives with his own flamethrower, and Eve's has run out of fuel. She grabs a fire hose and is able to deflect the flames until the two are face to face. Before Dex can fire another blast, John snipes his tank and makes him blow up, leaving Eve room to go. The Chancellor has his goons grab Ella and make their way toward a getaway vehicle. Eve catches up to them and kills all the gunmen before it's just her and the Chancellor. He tells her that killing him will not change anything, but Eve interrupts his monologuing with a well-earned bullet to the head. Eve frees Ella and leaves with her, while John confirms to the director that Eve is alive and the Chancellor is dead. Ella is reunited with Pine at the hospital. Meanwhile, Eve checks herself into the New York Continental and is later at a ballet performance and sees Katla dancing. Soon a contract on Eve's head for $5 million goes out. She spots the notification and sees other men in the theater getting the same message. Eve leaves the building as quickly as she can